Welcome back to Dist Media, a startup story. My name is Ben Olmos, founder and CEO of Dist Media. This is a podcast where I take you along my journey of starting Dist Media from the ground up. If this is your first time listening to the show, welcome. I'm happy you found us, and hopefully you'll like what you hear. For those of you coming back, I'm glad that we piqued your interest enough for you to return, and I hope that you enjoy this next step in our journey. This show is all about documenting Dist Media's startup journey and keeping you in the loop every step of the way. I'll be keeping you up to date on meetings, phone calls, emails, and all the things that I need to do to get this business up and running. So with that, let's pick up where we left off last time. All right, welcome back everybody to Dist Media, a startup story. And this episode, we're changing things up. So if you're a regular listener, or if you have listened to our podcast in the past, the first 4 episodes, something that you're going to notice is that this episode is going to take a little bit of a change in direction. And the reason for that is, as I listened back, and part of starting a business and doing this thing is listening back, evaluating what you're doing, and then making a determination of whether or not you feel like things are moving in the right direction or not. And as I listened back and got some feedback from some folks, I kind of felt like maybe this podcast was a little too lectury and a little too boring. And so I wanted to try and liven things up a little bit. And some things have changed. Now, when I last left you all, we were still very much in the infancy of Dist Media, and we are a little further along now. So as you listen to this episode, we're going to be going back in time a little bit, talking about some things that have happened, and then moving you forward in this episode and maybe the next couple before we get current to where we are today. So I appreciate you guys sticking around, listening in, and taking in some of the changes that have happened. So with that, I want to start out by introducing a new board member that we have. One of our previous board members, Mira, decided to take some time away from what we're doing, really just kind of leaving her board seat, primarily because she had another job opportunity. It was something that she really wanted to dedicate and some time to and focus on. Do not blame her at all. And still very much would love to hope that we cross paths with Mira again down the road. But when that happened, it forced me to have to say, I still need to create this board to help me with strategic directions, to help me with input and professional feedback and all kinds of wonderful things. And one of our board members, Keith, had recommended that I reach out and speak to Alan Landry, who is joining us. Alan, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Ben. Thanks for having me on. It's exciting to be part of this change, really.
Well, thanks, Alan. And let me give folks a little bit of up to speed of how we came onto this, because when we first connected, it wasn't because I was going after you as a board member. I was really kind of evaluating your interest of becoming a writer and contributor to Dist Media. But then as we spoke and I learned a little bit more about you and your background and the things that you've done, I was like, I could really use somebody like Alan to help with what we're doing. And so I ran it by you, and you graciously accepted to join us and help out, which is awesome. Thank you. So let's help people get up to speed with a little bit of who you are before we travel back in time. So Alan, I'll let you take it from here. Tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Oh, wow. Well, first, and you've heard me say this several times to you, thank you for the opportunity to play in your sandbox. This is absolutely fun for me. It's exciting. And I'm just overjoyed to have the opportunity to contribute some of the things. I love working with you and with the board. So by way of background, I'm a retired Army colonel, 26 years active duty. West Point graduate, 2 master's degrees in military arts and sciences. I'm a strategist, a strategic planner. After I retired from the Army, I went to work for Aerospace Defense Company, now known as RTX. It was Raytheon. I spent 10 years with them in strategy and business development leadership positions. retired from Raytheon in 2012 to start my own business. And so that's another reason I'm so excited to be here to learn from you, Ben, and to share my insights and the things I'm passionate about. So I appreciate the platform. Married, 4 children, and 12 grandchildren. And so,
My goodness.
yeah, seriously, those are the important things. So I tell everybody I'm 71 years young, and you're at this stage in my life. I should be contributing more than I've ever been able to contribute before because I've learned more. So when people talk about retiring and hanging it up, it's the craziest thing I ever heard of.
It's funny. One of the things I tell people a lot is that, one, I'm never going to retire, and I very much stick by that. Primarily because I always say, look at Warren Buffett. Like, talk about a guy who doesn't need another nickel and goes to work every day. And he does it because he loves what he does. And I think that's really the key, is to do something that you really enjoy, turn a buck doing it, and enjoy life. So that's a big part of it.
And making a difference. I mean, at the stage that we can all learn from each other, and at the stage of our lives, one of the things I love about your board is it's very diverse, and we have every age group basically represented. And yet we're all out there with the same kind of goal and purpose, which is to make a difference and bring our passions and our strengths together to create a team that's going to make this media successful. So again,
I mean, I generally, I love working with smart people who challenge me, who can push back on the things that I sometimes come up with, because I can come up with some crazy ideas at times. But also, I'm always looking for people who are smarter than me, but who can laugh and have a good time and enjoy the work, and not be so overtaken by the work that it then becomes a job.
That's right. That's right. That's one of the having this interactive opportunity here is not just a chance to learn from story, because there's nothing really more interesting, I think, in anybody's life than, why are you doing what you're doing? How did you get to where you are today? I mean, what was this little kernel of a seed that popped up in a successful businessman? You turn around one day and say, I'm going to create a media company. Like,
yeah. Well, yeah. So let's get on that. And I talked a little bit about that in previous podcasts, about this kind of being the right time to do it. And what I mean by that is really, from a technology standpoint, if one of the things that I think came out of the pandemic was a plethora of resources and tools and technology, and really kind of changed people's perceptions about what can be done in a remote environment. And as somebody who has really been looking at this stuff for some time, all the way back to, Tim Ferriss's book, 4-Hour Workweek, which is, got some years on it now. But, at the time that book came out, he's talking about setting up drop shipment businesses, setting up people who can help you all around the globe, look at your emails. And, he really opened up a lot of people's eyes to what remote work looked like. And then we all became remote workers in some form or fashion once a pandemic hit. And in fairness, I say all, a lot of us soft hand people. And what I mean by that are, people who, we have soft hands because we type a lot, and we don't necessarily work with our hands as vigorously as some others do. So I'm talking about the population of people that had to work from home. There's still a great number of people who did not, that opportunity didn't come to them. But even if it didn't directly come to your everyday work life, in some form or fashion, the pandemic changed the way that we did things and made us understand the value of the internet and computers and remote connectivity and all of that stuff. So we all got very educated in that. And that's when I talk about this being the right time. It's also the right time of people who I knew who were kind of transitioning into the second chapters of their lives, many of them successful careers for many years. And me, like you, Alan, many others who are on the board, like we're not done. Like there's still a lot of things we want to do, but the work that we're doing now is more the work that is self-fulfilling, that is enjoyable, that is helping us to remain creative and expand on things that we've enjoyed, but haven't necessarily had an outlet for. And so that's a big part of it too. And then we also have Matt Sancombe, who is really kind of our, he is our media expert, right? So Matt is an entrepreneur. He's a business owner. He runs multiple media organizations. And so just having his kind of guidance around some of these things of, what we can be doing better and all of that stuff, it has really helped as well. So being in the right place to have all those things come together. One of the things that I do want to shift gears on and talk about, though, is when we last left, the websites, Daily Pitch or the dailypitch.news, as well as distmedia.com, hadn't even been created yet. And so one of the things that I had to get to work on was building out those websites. And again, this is just one of those things that because of the advancements in technology, because things have gotten easier over time, the tools have gotten better, that, you can create a digital presence online, a very professional looking digital presence online, and do so with some I use this cautiously when I say relative ease, because if you've never worked in this space of web pages or domain names or anything like that, it's a lot to learn. But one of the things that I always want to impress upon people is none of this stuff is impossible. I didn't know any of this stuff when I first started doing it either. I just, kind of dedicated my attention to learning about it, reading about it, watching YouTube videos about it, going through endless forums and, community groups and Facebook pages, and just kind of immersing yourself amongst many other people who have the same kinds of questions you do about how to get something done. And, I say that because all the things that we're doing here at Dist Media, there are things that people can certainly also get a handle on and do themselves. It does take a little bit of time. It does help too, knowing people who do this for a living that I can also kind of reach out to and say, hey, I'm stuck on this thing. How do I do that? And, they can say, oh, try this or try that. So building out the websites was, I would say, one of those big things that really sucked up my weekend. I would say it took me probably, several hours to get everything kind of situated and working the way that I wanted it to.
Oh, I want to tug on this and go back to, you were talking about building out the website, but your comment about nothing is impossible. One of the things that, the reasons I said yes to you, and you've heard me say this, I love your story. I love what you're trying to do. And I watched all 4 of your podcasts. And the thing that I thought was so impressive that a lot of leaders don't get to is being able to walk someone through the journey, successes and failures. This worked, this didn't work. And you want people to not be afraid to innovate, to not be afraid to be an entrepreneur and to go out and do that. So you're learning as you go, but you're teaching. You're a professor, and you can't help but teach when you do go out there. But you're doing it with the purpose, and then you surround yourself with the board. And the other thing I think is most impressive, Ben, and really important for the audience to hear is, as a leader and the owner, you ask and you listen to the recommendations that come from other people. You don't always accept them, but you're always willing to entertain those ideas and thoughts. And so if we could pull on this whole business of what in the last 4 podcasts, what are the lessons learned that you could share with the group?
Gosh, lessons learned. Because there's a lot going on in there's a lot of different moving parts, right? So incorporating and starting your business that way, that there are lessons to be, learned from that. And if you've never established a business entity or filed for a C corp or anything like that, those are lessons to be learned. And it's funny, I was having this conversation with one of our other board members, new board members. Haven't introduced everybody to them, but we have another Matt on our board, Matt Gilbert. We'll get to talking about Matt in future episodes, but Matt is also an academic and an entrepreneur, and because we're both in academia, I talked to him about the fact that we teach this stuff all the time. I go into classrooms all the time, and I tell people with confidence how the business world works. But some things that we talk about in the classroom, in practice, maybe we haven't practiced it to the extent that expert, in that thing knows it. And that's one of the things about being a professor and teaching in college, is that a lot of times we talk theoretical, we talk concept, we draw from our own experiences, having been the nice thing about being kind of the practitioner professor is that you have worked with a lot of companies, a lot of different people, a lot of leaders. I tend to do a lot of things in sales, marketing, operations, or analytics. So, that's kind of my world, and I know how to speak to that quite a bit. Now, academically, I've studied a lot of different things. I have experience with these things. But, when we talk about social media, because, there are classes that I teach in social media, I understand these things, but doing the work, one of the things that is really kind of hard to articulate is the fact that there's no formula for this. You can read a textbook about it. You could follow every single thing the textbook says, but when you execute, it may not come out like the way you envisioned it would. And you have to then learn how to go, oh, okay, well, now I need to step back. Now I need to, tweak. Now I need to reset. And by the way, this isn't just like media stuff. This is everything. Like, this is every company has a product idea that, will either become part of the billboard of great ideas or will go to the graveyard of bad ideas. Mm-hmm. Every company has, its stars and, those ideas that got, canned because it just for one reason or another didn't work out. They all started out as great ideas. But being able to, I think, to talk to people about what works and what doesn't work and why it didn't work and be able to give that analysis. One of the things, Alan, that we've talked about is a lot of times when people talk about business, they talk about business from the success stories. They look at it retroactively and they say, oh, this is what they did. And if you can somehow steal some of that energy or some of those insights and replicate some of those practices, then you have a better chance of succeeding. In my years of experience, what I realized is that's not necessarily true. There are great leaders all the time who move from one organization to the other. They were stellar where they came from. They move into something else. All of a sudden, everything they were doing before, it just doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? There's a lot of reasons why it doesn't work. What I'm trying to do with this media is say, look, folks, if you're interested in starting a business, if you're interested in, and it doesn't have to be a media business, it could be any business. Like, I'm going to open up what we're doing here, share it with people. And who knows? In a year from now, we might not get any traction. This whole thing could go bust and we'll have some cool stories to talk about how one time we tried to do this thing. Or we might get some traction here. Some people might get interested in what we're doing and might say, hey, yeah, I like that. I want to support that. I want to see more of that and get more of that. And that's what we're hoping is going to happen. But hell, it's not when you watch these influencers or people on YouTube or Instagram, they talk about like, oh, I just did this, and this, and bam, I made $1,000 a week. Like, no, it's not that. Can it happen? Sure. Does it happen? It fails more time than it succeeds.
So is this why you call this thing dist media? Because it's not focusing just on the success stories. You're telling the inside. You're telling what the sausage factory really looks like there.
Yeah, I'm this is a crass analogy, but I'm showing the animals getting slaughtered, and it's not just pretty packaging in the grocery shelves. Truly, it's dist media. The name comes from being dissed, kind of one of those Gen X terms that means disrespected. I do not have a media background. I did not study journalism. And there are going to be journalists out there who look at what we're doing and they're going to go, what do those idiots know? And you're exactly right. We don't know anything about this. But you know what? I read plenty of business articles from journalists who don't seem to know what they're talking about either. So you know what? We're even.
Well, you're disrupting something here, and when Clay Christensen wrote that book, The Innovator's Dilemma, one of the key points that he made was, anytime you can identify an unserved or underserved marketplace, you've got an opportunity to disrupt something. Talk to me about what you're trying to disrupt here and why.
Well, so I'm trying to disrupt business education a little bit, and part of the reason why is I heard something years ago, and I wish I could remember who said it, but they were talking about how we are training people today. We're in college, we are training people today for jobs that don't exist yet. And when I was working on my undergrad, social media manager was not a job. It wasn't even a thought. Influencer was a ridiculous idea of what a job could be. Somebody making their profession creating content and putting it on YouTube 10 years ago, that seemed insane. Right. And today it's just a reality. So having been in academia for nearly 20 years now, I continue to work with many people who are stuck in their traditional ways of academia. And, this is something I think about a lot. There is, obviously be careful as I say this, but I don't think there's much being taught in college today at the undergrad level that you can't find online.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
And so the question many may have is, well, then what's the value of college? Well, here's the value of college. College will force you to be exposed to something you wouldn't otherwise expose yourself to.
Right.
And get feedback from people who are proven experts in what they know. And whether you agree with that feedback or not, or whether you want to take that class or not, is not really the point. The point is to be taken through a pathway of being exposed to something that's going to make you grow in ways you probably didn't expect you would. And so a lot of times what I hear in the undergrad kind of landscape is, wow, I kind of knew that, but I didn't know what it was called. And then I read this book or I took this class and now I know what it's called. And so my thinking around a lot of this is that how do we get people to be better at certain things in business, because it's going to help them for the rest of their life. Something, and I'm biased when I say this because I do have business degrees, but I often say a business degree is a life degree, because the things that you will learn in a business course and in a business curriculum, you will apply to whatever job you have, whether you're an entrepreneur or a doctor or a lawyer or a aerospace engineer. Like, there are things you're going to learn. in a business degree that are just going to continue to pay dividends. And what I find is really unfortunate is that many of these things in a business degree we should be incorporating in your lower level classes, like from junior high and high school should have a lot of these things that we teach in business curriculum. So yeah, I'm trying to bring everybody up to speed a little bit faster than coming into a business degree program and you're like starting out a little bit behind. Trying to think of a better way of putting that. But suffice it to say, I just think that there's a ton of information that we can bring to people. And I hope to be able to do that through the content that you'll get here through Daily Pitch and other things that we hope to do down the road.
So if you're king for a day here, and you're trying to disrupt this whole field of business education, which, by the way, it's very interesting because you're on the inside as an educator. And most of the time where disruption is successful, it comes from someone on the inside who tried and was not able to make what they wanted to get done within the system, the conservative system. So you're disrupting things there. You're king for a day. What is your content going to do that is going to be the most significant disruptor?
What I hope that we can get to is, and I kind of draw a little bit from my own younger year experience. Now, when I was younger, we didn't have the technology and the internet and the mobility of knowledge that we have today. I mean, if you wanted to learn something, you had to go to the library.
Exactly. Use a card catalog.
Yeah. I mean, so we have the world's information in the palm of our hands these days, which is great. I mean, that's a wonderful starting point. The problem is that we have a lot of noise and not a lot of editors.
Oh, wonderful comment.
So, what I want to be able to do is edit this tsunami of information that is out there about business and focus it in a way that it becomes useful.
Yeah.
And there are a couple institutions out there right now, organizations out there that are making education more accessible. So there's like University of the People, there's Sailor University, there's Udemy, there's Coursera, and all of these organizations are, I think, doing great at making education more affordable. But, if I had to take younger me and, I didn't go to college straight out of high school, but I was always interested in business, but, didn't really know where to start with that, didn't know where to focus with that. My ambition would be that people can engage in the stuff that we're doing and really start to understand that this stuff isn't hard. What is hard is getting yourself focused and motivated to actually do it. I think once you have the focus and the motivation, the grit, that determination, once you have that then lights the fuse and gets you moving. And the other part of that, I think, is getting the positive reinforcement that what you're doing is moving in the right direction. And that positive reinforcement comes from either positive feedback or, quite honestly, just dollars in your pocket. Right. So I think when somebody makes a little bit of money doing something and they realize that, like, oh, okay, well, this kind of works. Like, I want everybody to get to a point where they go, I can't believe I get paid this much for doing that.
That's yeah. You interesting story that you tell here, because you're representative of that unserved or underserved market. And so you were in that position, and now what you're doing is leveraging your business acumen, your education, your credentials, your board, all the social technology media. You're leveraging all that to solve the problem that you didn't have a solution for when you were younger.
Well, yeah, and I think that there's a lot of people out there who have that kind of potential, but they don't surround themselves with the right influences to get to where they want to be. There's another. I don't know where this saying came from, but I heard it and I liked it. What got you here won't get you there.
Yeah, right.
And I like that because there's a lot of people who, they get some early success, but then they don't change their circle of influence to take them to the next level.
You
And
talk.
another something that I heard this on a podcast, and I wish I could remember, but again, like I want to credit. So if anybody hears this and they're like, "Hey, dummy, this is who it came from,"
Yeah.
let me know. But another something that I heard that I thought was really great is that you want to have the people in your life should be, more or less split up into thirds. One third of the people in your life should be people that you're trying to help bring up to your level. The other third of people in your life should be the people who are at your level that you're able to, kind of be yourself around and bounce ideas off of each other. And then the other third of people in your life should be people who are at a level that you're trying to get to. And that having that balance of always trying to get to a certain level, but also working to bring people up behind you, like that just creates a really good flow for, for living. What I want to do is like I want to help those folks who are down there wondering like, how do I get focused? How do I get energized? How do I do this stuff? How do I start a business? How do I start a website? Like what's it going to cost me? How much do I need to save? What are the kind of people that I need to bring in to help me get to where I want to be? And everybody's story is going to be different, but like I started this from nothing. So I want people to realize that like, hey, even if this thing fails, you're going to learn a lot along the way and you're going to apply that to the next thing that you do.
I love the word you used, but you didn't describe it as grit. And one of the things that I have watched you in action in board meetings when people tell you, Ben, that's a stupid idea. Why are you doing that? And you're doing exactly what you're doing now. You laugh because you're not afraid to pivot. Earlier, when you were talking about 20 years from now, maybe this all goes to puff. Well, the point is, Ben will still be out there pivoting to something else because you're not going to give up. Talk about grit and where that comes from.
Oh man. I think that so something I've said a lot throughout my life is that hunger is a great motivator.
True that.
and so food hunger is a great motivator. Seeing a crowd of people living the good life and you're not is a good motivator. Something that I haven't shared in this podcast. I, as I mentioned, did not go to college right out of high school, and what that meant was I had to take a lot of jobs that didn't require a degree. Even though some of those jobs were some of the most fun I had, they were also the lowest paying kind of work, labor kind of work. I've done everything from fixing washers and dryers and refrigerators to delivering pizza and flowers and working in kitchens and like all kinds of stuff. The thing though is that my grit is wanting to live a better life, do things that I saw other people doing, and realizing like there's two attitudes you can take to seeing people do things that you're not doing. You can either try and tear them down to make them your equal, or you can try and build yourself up to get there just as well. And I much prefer building myself up than trying to just tear other people down. By the way, Angela Duckworth, she's probably the foremost expert on grit. I'm getting academic now. Grit is one of those things that there's a lot of behavioral variables in there. Yeah, grit is that's a hard thing to answer. But suffice it to say, I think for me personally, it was desire to do something more. It was my upbringing. My dad had a really good work ethic to him. My siblings have really good work ethics to them. Like, there's nobody who, I think, in my family, if you sat around and waited for something to come to you, you would get ridiculed and teased. And so, it's like just expected that you've got to go out there and work for things.
I've seen a lot of grit, of course, from my military background and so forth. But what I would tell you, there's a distinction here, one that's really important for you. And part of it is your sense of humor that you bring to your grit. It's not just persevering and just hanging in there and pivoting when something doesn't work. It's doing it with that character that says, I'm going to bring other people along. And that's such a powerful thing. It's inspirational. I have to tell you, I've shared that. One of the reasons that I enjoy working with you is because of that. And part of your disruption here is bringing other people along on your journey. So how can people engage with you and this media in this journey that we're all on now? And, what kind of resources can they bring to bear to help you out, help us out?
Well, it's funny right now. Anything you want to do that I don't have to pay you is very welcome.
Feedback. That's good. Feedback's free, right?
Well, because that's the reality of it right now. And everybody on my board right now knows this. And I've shared this with folks. Like, I am giving up equity in the company in exchange for people's time and attention. And I think one of the things that younger people can learn from that is that by dividing up the pie and sharing it, you will get more help than trying to own everything yourself because you want to reign supreme and, you want to run everything. You want to call the shots, whatever movie influenced you or television show or public figure that you think is out there. You look at a guy like Mark Cuban. You don't think Mark Cuban has investors? You don't think the guy works with a lot of other people whenever he's doing a venture or a collaboration? Like, there are, he doesn't go after these things and say 100% of this is mine. Even his earliest companies, even broadcast.com, one of the earliest things, he had partners, he had people he worked with. So I think one of the things that you can learn early on is don't be so focused on owning the whole thing yourself. Split it up, share it, open it up. I think that helps. And so when I say, like, now I'm at a point where, I'm not looking necessarily to give away more equity, although I have, still equity in reserve that if somebody comes along that's really talented and thinks that we can blow this thing up with what they know how to do, my ears are open. I'll certainly entertain that thought, but also understand too that, me being who I am and the work that I do, I also enjoy all the other stuff that I am involved in and all the other things that I'm doing. So what I want Dist Media to become is that, or what I guess I'd say, what I want people to understand about this is you can create something like this, and it doesn't mean that you have to break away from the stuff that is your, kind of bread and butter, right? So my bread and butter is not Dist Media. I have full-time work elsewhere. I love the full-time work I'm doing. I have no ambitions to stop doing that full-time work that I'm doing. But, it's funny. So people will say, well, then why are you doing this? Okay.
That was the next question. Why, Ben?
Why are you doing this if you don't want it to be this big thing? So people are very familiar with Shark Tank by this time, right? Does anybody ever sit there the next season of Shark Tank and ask Mark Cuban, are you sure you want to invest in another company? Are you sure you want to own another thing? you realize that he splits his time across a lot of different things that he does.
Exactly.
And so my point here is that I'm always going to have the thing that I'm dedicated to. But what are you going to do with the other amount of time that you have left in your day? Because I think what people have to kind of think about, and by the way, and I always tell people this, like there are people who are going to listen to this next part about how I work and they're going to be like, I don't want to do that. But I'll be honest with you folks, I don't take a day off. When I go on vacation, I have my laptop. I'm always checking my email. I have several email accounts that I'm always looking at. I might work till 2 in the morning. I might get up at 6:30. I might work till 2 in the morning, get up at 6 the next morning, and because I got to do something before I start my primary thing. I don't count the hours I work. I don't count how many days in a row I work. I
Yeah.
just have a list of things that is constantly growing and shrinking, and those are the things I'm working on.
And it works for you, right?
That's what works for me. Do
Yeah.
I expect it to work for everybody? No. But if you really want to get to where you want to be, you got to put the work in. And there's
Yeah.
no easy way, there's no fast way. You always have to prepare for the opportunity, because when the opportunity comes knocking, you have to, one, be able to recognize it, and then two, be prepared to be able to move on it. So if you're not, then you're not going to get very far. Like I shouldn't say that. It's not that you're not going to get far. You're not going to get as far as you'd want to go.
And it's going to be a lot harder.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of things. I guess the last, I mean, there's so much meat, so many wonderful messages and lessons here. The abundance thinking versus scarcity thinking, dividing your time, doing what works for you, surrounding yourself with people that can complement your strengths and so forth. But we got an audience out there, Ben, that's listening, and my question to you is, what at this stage of the game with podcast number 5, what words of wisdom or insights would you like to share with them?
Yeah, it's funny. I always positive think like, well, words of wisdom, like work your ass off, and don't complain. No, I mean, I tend to be very kind of pragmatic and a little, kind of plain spoken. I would say that, one of the things that I would enjoy is seeing this thing grow to the point where, people benefit from listening to what we're doing and then taking that and using it as a way to kind of build what they're doing. And I say this all the time, like, and even anybody who's listening to this, like, if you have a question, if you have a thought, you have an idea, you have feedback, like, send it. Just feel free to reach out and ask. And I would say that that's probably one of the things that people put as a barrier too often for themselves, is they're just afraid to ask. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of really interesting, talented, sometimes even famous people in the work that I've done. And the one thing that I've always appreciated is that everybody, stop putting people on a pedestal.
Amen. Yes.
Stop putting people so high that you feel you can't occupy the oxygen that they are breathing. You can walk up to anybody you wish and say hello and introduce yourself. And because I guarantee you that person, uh, maybe royalty in England might have had a little bit of a head start, but you'll be surprised at the number of people who are doing well in life who didn't start out that way.
Right.
Don't be afraid to reach out, walk up to people, ask people questions. Just be respectful. I think with a little bit of respect, a little bit of grit and a little bit of confidence that you're not going to make an ass out of yourself. And if you do, so what? You'll get over it.
That's awesome, and awesome advice there for anybody to take on board. Well, those are all the questions I've got for you today, Ben.
Well, Alan, I appreciate it. I think, kind of having a format where we, kind of talk about what we're building toward is good. This episode, I think, is going to give people a little bit of understanding about you, about me, about some of, it's a little bit of a reset episode, I think, to give people a little chance to see where the ambition is. And we are going to get more into the business side of things. And so I want people to, like hang in there. I just don't want to be as lecture oriented as we have in the past. So one of the things that we're going to be doing as we move ahead is bringing on other board members and making our kind of team conversations here a little bit more open to all of y'all. You get to hear us kind of build this thing and hear our ideas and what works, what might not work, but there's a lot more to learn. So coming up, we'll be talking about what we're spending to do all of this. I joked about the fact that, and it's true, I don't have a lot of money yet to pay anybody, primarily because one of the things that we are challenged with is monetizing what we're doing. So we're going to talk about that. How do we get monetized? How do we make money? We're doing a lot of effort right now. And right now we've earned, let's see, I need to break out 2 fingers. I've earned absolutely nothing so far, but that's okay because, if you do it well, it'll come. So
I do want to draw the audience, anybody out there listening, if you have not checked out the Dis Media website and the content that's already out there that Ben's been working on and the other board members and so forth, take the time. He's got bite-sized chunks on this stuff, and I can commend the podcast as well as the articles. You will find something of interest in any of this stuff. So look forward to more sessions like this too, Ben. And again, thank you for letting me play in your sandbox. It's a big sandbox, man.
There's lots to do, but I'm hoping that we're gonna get more focused in the weeks ahead. Because if you're checking out the stuff that's coming out now, we're talking about things that are happening in the past. So we'll get up to speed here soon, and then we'll be putting some shows together on content and all of that stuff. So
look forward to it.
All right. Well, folks, thanks again for checking out Dis Media, a startup story. You can always check out the work that we are doing on thedailypitch.news. Or if you're curious about other things that we might have in the works, you can also go to dismedia.com. But until next time, we'll see you later.
See you later. Adios.